The world champion Anatoly Karpov plays the move e4, to which Anthony Miles plays the move a6. When Karpov first saw this move, there was no reaction on his face. Karpov is a very serious chess player who doesn't show a lot of emotions on his face generally. Whereas the audience that was watching this game, they were going crazy. Like, how can you play the move a6 against the best player? But let's try to break down why Anthony Miles played a6. First of all, Miles knows that his preparation is not good as that of Karpov. Okay, so if he plays the main line, let's say a main line like c5 or e5, Karpov is going to be much better prepared there because he's a world champion. He has a bigger team working for him. So after e4 a6, this is a way for Anthony Miles to take Karpov out of his comfort zone, out of the opening prep. And the second reason for a6 is, even though it looks like it doesn't follow any opening principles, Black has a very solid plan of developing his pieces, as you'll soon see in the game. Karpov plays the move d4, takes control of the center, which is what you should do, b5. And now here the thing is, Black with the move a6 b5 has gained slight space on the queen side, and now they're going to develop the bishop to b7 to hit this pawn. Knight f3 and bishop to b7. Now this pawn is under attack. What do? Karpov defends it with bishop to d3, knight f6. There is one more knight attacking the pawn. So Miles defends it with the move queen to e2. e6, opening the diagonal for this bishop. Karpov plays the move a4, instantly putting pressure on this pawn. Miles decides, okay, he's attacking on the flank. Now a very good way to meet a flank attack is to strike in the center, is to, hit out at the center. And he does that with the move c5, immediately putting pressure on white center. Now if you see, after this move a6, it looked like Black has given up the center, but after c5, they are actually fighting for it. It's not that Black's pieces are completely idle or passive. They are looking at some of the important squares in White's position. Now if White, let's say, tries to capture this pawn in the hopes of gaining a free pawn, it doesn't work, because the moment the bishop moves, this bishop is going to capture this pawn. Okay, and let's say if instead of that White decides, instead of taking, let me push this pawn to e5, then Black can even complicate the matters. He's not going to push knight d5. He can play c4 and get rid of this light squared bishop of White. And once this light squared bishop goes, there will be no one to challenge this black bishop, which is going to be a monster on this open diagonal. So because of this, Karpov decides, okay, I need to take this pawn, bishop into c5. There is one more black bishop that is looking at the center, knight d2, and Miles decides to save this pawn with the move b4. Karpov plays e5, hitting at this knight, and the knight jumps to d5. Knight e4 happens, hitting at the bishop. Where will the bishop go? The bishop has to drop back to e7. Also, another benefit of knight e4 is it opens the diagonal for this bishop to cover the square, so that the knight cannot come here and fork the queen and the bishop. So right now, maybe White can try to play a move like bishop to g5 and hit at this bishop, so that once this bishop gets traded off, White has this knight d6 check. This knight gets a beautiful spot on this square, or White can even capture the bishop and later go knight d6 check. So bishop g5 is what could have been an interesting alternative for White, but Karpov decides to go short castle. Miles continues his development with knight to c6, and White also continues his development with bishop to d2. Black plays the move queen to c7. Now this queen and knight, they are looking at this e4 pawn. They are keeping a watchful eye there. Whenever you have the opponent's king stuck in the center, it's a good idea to open the position, which is essentially what Karpov is trying to do here. So he plays the move c4, hitting out at the knight. This takes, and now the knight drops back and takes, opening up the queen's line to protect this pawn, so that there are two defenders and two attackers, which means Black cannot capture this pawn. Black takes the knight, and now the bishop takes the knight back. Now here Black finds a very, very nice way to put a little bit of pressure on White's position. He plays the move knight to b4, hitting out at this bishop. Slowly, it looks like Black was doing nothing in the game, but suddenly his pieces are becoming active. Karpov decides, okay, to chop this knight off. He chops this knight off and goes rook a c1. And now this queen is attacked. Karpov still has a small lead in development, and at the same time Black's king is stuck in the center. So Karpov hopes that there is some way that he can create an attack with the king sitting in the center, and with all his pieces looking here, he would be able to whip up some attack very quickly. The queen is attacked. Now the queen drops to b6. White plays the move bishop to e4. Black decides, okay, since if I exchange a few pieces, it will be harder for white to attack, okay? Because generally when you're attacking, you don't want to exchange pieces. You want to keep your pieces so that the more pieces you have, the more attacking firepower you have with yourself. So bishop e4 happens. Black decides, okay, I'll castle. And I think now on the next move, either I can take or either I can get my rook here and start to exchange of all the pieces. Now white decides, okay, it is time for me to attack because all my pieces are pointing here. All my pieces can come very quickly into the game. So he plays the move knight to g5. Now there is a bishop, there is a knight, there is a bishop, there is a queen that can join into the attack very soon. But Miles in this position is very calm and plays the move h6 as if there is no attack that is happening there. Okay, very calm, super calm. Karpov knows that if he doesn't take his chance here, these two bishops in the long run can become a very big problem for him. Okay, usually the bishops are better in the endgame because there are fewer pawns on the board, fewer pieces on the board, so the bishops get more open diagonals. So h6 happened, hitting at this knight, bishop h7 check came, and now the king drops to h8. Now this knight is attacked, and if this knight moves, you could lose this bishop. So you cannot move this knight. Instead, Karpov plays the move bishop to b1. Now remember, black cannot capture this knight because there is queen h5 check, and boom, it would be a checkmate on h7. Now if white gets one more move to put his queen on d3, there could be some very serious issues along this diagonal, okay? Which is why in the first place, Karpov played the move bishop h7 check so that the king could go to g8. Sorry, the king could go to h8 and his queen could come here and give a mating threat here. Miles simply drops back with his bishops. Miles is like, okay, I need to defend my king. I need to get my pieces back. Queen d3, there is g6. And this is a slightly better position for black because black has two bishops here. And white's attack doesn't really come to anything here. So after bishop to e7, the knight drops back to e4. When the opponent is attacking you, a good strategy is to exchange of the pieces. With that in mind, Miles plays the move rook a8, trying to chop off all the pieces. Karpov plays queen d3. Okay, it's a mistake, but there is still some, threats to give a checkmate on this square. Whenever the knight moves, this diagonal is going to get open for the queen. Miles first decides to exchange the rook. The rook exchange happens, and now queen to b2. Now remember, whenever the knight moves, white doesn't have time to remove the knight, otherwise there would be a checkmate. So white has to defend this rook. White rook jumps back to e1, protecting this knight as well. And once again, Miles is very calm. He doesn't press the panic button, he simply gobbles one more pawn. He knows anytime the knight moves, once again there is going to be a check here, and next move he's going to defend with g6. And after queen into e5, it is black who has a winning position, because not only is white down 2 pawns, Karpov is down 2 pawns, but also his pieces, they are not really generating any threats to the black king, even though they look like they are well placed. So queen d7 happens, Karpov tries to gobble one more pawn, and now Miles counterattacks with the move bishop to b4, hitting at this rook. Where is it going to go? The rook goes to e3. After the next move for black, Karpov's attack fizzles out, and black just has a completely winning technical endgame. Can you find it? Try to pause the video. And by the way, if you're liking this video, do hit the like button and do subscribe to my channel. Okay, so after rook e3, Miles plays the move queen to d5. Now there is a threat of checkmate here, and at the same time black is offering a trade of the queens. White has to take, the bishop takes back, and now knight c3 happens. This is a completely winning endgame because black has 2 bishops and an extra pawn. It's very nice to see how Miles is able to convert it. He goes rook c8 first, activates the rook, knight e2, g5, and now he starts to push the pawns. He defends the pawns. The bishop drops back, controlling the square. King f1, bishop e5, rook h8, trying to get his rook from the other side in the game. f4, gf4, knight f4, the bishop drops back, hitting out this bishop again. Knight e2, the knight drops back again, rook h1 check. All these pieces are very poorly coordinated, whereas Miles's bishops and rooks, they are really nicely coordinated. For example, if you see, this bishop is putting pressure on both these pawns. Then this bishop could swoop in and give a check from anywhere. This rook has come in inside white's position. King d2 and rook h2, targeting this pawn. g3 happened, bishop f3, rook a1, rook g2, and take, rook g3, rook a8, bishop c7, guarding this pawn. And after this move, bishop c7, Karpov resigned and Miles won the game. So you see, the move a6, the first move he played a6, it looks like a completely weird move. But it was not so easy for white to play against it, because there is a very, very concrete idea that black has, which is what Miles executed in the game, as we saw, with b5, bishop b7, e6, c5, and he was able to hit white center. White, having no clue what to do, lost the game. After I watched this game, I also started to play this move. Of course, not against stronger players, but I definitely tried it against weaker players, and I can tell you, my results were very, very good with this line. I had like two beautiful games that I played with this move. If you want to see a video on that, do let me know in the comment section. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. Bye bye.